Hey everybody, welcome to the Back to Brilliance podcast. We're your hosts Henry and Joseph. Thanks for tuning in. We ask that you subscribe, leave a comment and a review. It helps great people like you find our podcast. And with that, today we're going to be talking about exercises to find your North Star. In this episode, we're going to provide 4 highly actionable self-discovery exercises, and we're going to walk you through how to craft a concise purpose statement that'll serve as the ultimate compass for all your future business decisions. So with that, guys, I want to go ahead and bring on our co-host, Joseph. Joseph, say what's up and take it away.
Hey everybody, how's it going? So today I wanted to, just go into how to find your purpose, or some ideas on how to find your purpose, because lately I've been talking to people and I'm getting a lot of uncertainty, not only in their career path, but also just just in life in general. And I'm a strong believer, especially now that that I've been doing my business for a year. Once you find your something that you can really be passionate about, it really starts to fill out your days, your weeks, and your life. Because if you're going to a job that you don't want to go to, life feels really bleak. But if you're serving a purpose that serves others and it serves yourself, life feels a lot more pleasant.
Absolutely, and that's the thing, I recently I've caught myself watching a lot of YouTube videos where they're doing interviews on people that are older, right? That have already fulfilled like their work, careers and stuff like that. And they're asking them questions. And I like to watch those because it's like almost like you're breaking down, the regrets that they went through is basically what it is, and the things that they missed. So, a lot of them say this is like, I think if I can go back, I would have followed my passions a little bit more. I wouldn't have been so concerned about, just doing these things where I missed a lot of things, and I think that's kind of where we're at today, where the uncertainty comes from is pretty much it's distractions, right? So when I was a youngster, which is a long time ago, we had distractions too, but they weren't like they are today. Like in our days in the 80s, we kids were outside playing. We were riding bikes for fun. We would smash a can and put it on the back of the tire just to make noise, to cause havoc. Like these are the things we would do, which don't exist today. And I think the passions and the, stem from that because we lost that, right? The simplicities of life. Like we don't value the things. We're always looking for that validation, on the external side. But a lot of it is uncertainty comes from looking for validation from things. So that leads us into our first point where we're talking about the myth of external search. A lot of times, again, we're looking for that outward thing, but sometimes it's just so simple, the simple things. So we'll break that down. We'll go through that as the podcast unfolds.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I would agree with everything that you just said, right? I mean, there's really no simple pleasures anymore. Like there's no if there is, it requires money, and not everything requires money, especially the small things in life. But going to like the external search, like basically what we mean by this is like sometimes we ask people, oh, what should I do? What am I good at? Well, sometimes you kind of know deep down what you're good at, what you're passionate about. You just have yet to really look into yourself or look at what you do. There was one time where I was feeling like this, and I pretty much like listed out a whole bunch of things. Like I was like, okay, well, what do people naturally come to me for, and what are things that I naturally do, whenever I'm not getting paid to do it, or if I'm not like obligated to do it. What are things that people rely on me for, or know me about, or know me for, and then what do I naturally do? Because you'll probably feel, or you'll probably find your purpose, or at least a passion that you're passionate about within that.
Absolutely. And that's a good point. You know what I mean? Taking that inventory and sitting back. Because a lot of times I think that's where the hang up is like, I don't know what I want, I'm passionate about. I don't know what I really like. I don't know, because we spend our whole life upon the things we don't like, and we know the things that we don't want, but yet you find yourself getting more of it because you're just doing it, as a habit, right? And we talked about habits before. Go back and listen to some of our earlier podcasts. We broke down about breaking habits and things like that. And that comes, to taking that inventory, which brings us to our next point, is uncovering the unique gifts. And this one I like, it's really good. First of all, we all have to pay our bills, right? So sometimes you have to shovel crap, you know what I mean? And just to get paid, but that's not like you're I'm going to be here forever, right? So don't wherever you're at right now in life, don't think it's permanent. The one thing we've always taught here is that the one thing we can count on is change. Change is always going to happen. So embrace the change and, move with the times. But we're talking about here, looking for that external search. I think the uncertainty comes because sometimes you just don't know, right? And it just feels like you're just wandering aimlessly through life. And what you have to do is take that time, like Joe's saying, is to take that inventory and to see what you're good at, where your natural gifts lie. So uncovering your unique gifts. For me, this one, it's not taking your skills for granted. Maybe you enjoy drawing. That might be your gift if you enjoy drawing, or sewing, or knitting, or whatever it is, and you think like, oh man, I could never get paid on this. Well, you're wrong. There's a website called Etsy, and making millions of dollars. People are making money on that just by selling, their talents, So, when you're dealing with your talents, whatever you're good at, you should utilize it. It's a God-given gift to you, and you should exercise it, in any way you can. Sometimes it's problem solving. Maybe you're a numbers person. You just love to work with that, so you just got to take the time, like Joe said, take inventory and see, what your gifts are.
Exactly. And, really, really lean into, like I said, things that naturally come to you, because you may be really good at gardening, or you may really be good at cooking. All of these things, or maybe there's a book that I used at one point, that a college prep program I was in gave to me, but it's called "What Color Is Your Parachute?" And that book was really crazy. There's another book, it's called Strength Finder. There's a bunch of books that you can fill out that will help you really like fine tune and help you brainstorm. But really, the Color of Your Parachute book, it broke down everything, right? Like, what are some interests, what are things that you don't like, and all of that. And it really broke down like even the smallest of things, right? You may look at like, oh, I like to destroy things, or I like to take things apart. Well, that shows that you have like a engineering mind, but also you like to work with your hands. And so even something is like, oh, I like to play with Hot Wheels or whatever, right? That is all, you could turn that into a passion, right? And so all of that, or you can turn it into you can break it down into a passion that could be used as a job that we just take for granted. And so that's why the power of your passions is so powerful, because you may look at just, oh, well, I like to draw. Well, like Henry just said, you could turn that into a whole job market for yourself, because, well, you may like to draw, so you can draw for others, right? Or do things that require you to draw, and that will really ignite your enthusiasm, because not only are you now working with a purpose, but you're doing it with things that you naturally like to do.
Absolutely. And like Joe said, if you're one of those people that like to, take things apart and destroy it, right? Well, some people would say you ruined it, but there's a business for that, right? We call it dismantling. that's a real business, which recycles things and does things. So, as you start to like see how can I turn this into something as opposed to saying, well, it's just a hobby, right? Everything that starts out as a hobby always turns into, a special niche, right? So, like for me, I love music and I've always been around music my whole life, so I was a DJ, and I enjoy it. And I'm not that bad, I've gotten paid on it. So I know like I'm good enough. I keep the dance floor going. So like I enjoy it, but it's so hard to make for me, because I'm stuck in my old ways, right? So I go with what I know, but like where you want to go is where it flows, right? You want to be in that flow state. So when you're in that flow state, once you start to understand your gifts and stuff like that. So, you start to see like it's infectious and it helps others, right? So then, like, hey, maybe there's something to this, if people are like asking you more about it and like, hey, this was cool and they're giving you good feedback, then, that's kind of how the accidental niches come about, so like, don't take it for granted, your passions and your skills, don't take them for granted thinking nobody wants them. Maybe just the people around you because they know you, right? And it's always hard for you to grow, right? So we call it, crabs in a bucket mentality. Like, what do you think? Stick with your job. It's paying you well. It's doing good, but you're not happy. That's the reality. And the whole thing of life is you only get one life to live. So like I'm saying, I watch those older people and they're talking about their regrets, right? And a lot of the regrets is I didn't take a chance on my passions. I didn't take a chance on doing this. I didn't take a chance on doing that. I played it safe, So, and they have regrets. So our word here is to help you to find, and to utilize your gifts, your passions, go within. You know what I mean? Don't look at the external, go within. And that's how, we're saying like sometimes that happens. The accidental niche pops up.
Exactly. And sometimes, right, kind of following suit with like a couple of our previous episodes, there is a lot of misalignment, right? People are like, oh, I'm just going to do what pays me really well, right? And so that may pay you really well, but you're not going to get fulfillment out of it, right? You may be doing something that is really out of your element, right? Some people are like, oh, I'll just go into nursing because it pays me well. But are you even good at doing that, right? Do you have great bedside manners or whatever, right? That's like a thing that's lacking a lot right now because people just get into it for the money and they don't get into it for the passion. And not only that, but if you're an entrepreneur, maybe you see, oh, well, AI is blowing up, but you may not even care about AI, right? You may not even care about how can I use AI, but you're just like, okay, I see the dollar signs. Well, those dollar signs will definitely burn you out if you're not utilizing all of your skills because there is a big gap between enjoyment versus competence, right? So, you may be good at it, but do you enjoy it? And, there are people who say, well, if I'm good at it, I can learn to enjoy it. But there is a much deeper level of enjoyment whenever you actually genuinely do and feel aligned with what you do. I could speak to that personally because pretty much from COVID um, up until last year, pretty much, I was doing graphic design and video editing. And, I'm good at it. I'm competent at those things, but I was never passionate about it. And so I never tried to grow. I never tried to push myself because me pushing myself meant I would do more of what I don't really care to do, at least on a professional level. On a personal level, on a recreational level, sure. But on a professional level, I never wanted to have a bunch of clients and all of that. I just did it to keep my head afloat.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's always working toward the greater mission, right? And what's the greater mission? The greater mission in life is to be happy. That's it. Like that's what most people are after, right? I want the American dream, right? That's why a lot of immigrants have come here to this country because they want that, right? That was the greater mission. So a lot of times, we look at things, from that perspective, but it's just getting back to the fundamentals. You know what I mean? It goes beyond the bank account, right? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's great to have money, but if you're sick, you know, and you're unhealthy and you have no relationship, you have nothing, what good is the money? You know what I mean? So it comes back to, you know, what's the greater mission? What makes me happy at this, you know, when I'm doing it? And all you have to do is do that and find a way to monetize it. And with today's technology and today's ways in life, you know, and you're going to have your sense of purpose and direction. You're not going to have uncertainty, right? You know, the only things that give us uncertainty and not searching or, you know, getting to our North Star is when we're just lost, right? You know, if you're just not on course. You're not following your GPS. You know, you're kind of just chasing after this and chasing after that. Ooh, I heard this. Yeah, that sounds easy. Ooh, I heard that. You know, so a lot of times what happens too is we just start running everywhere. And I've said this before. I'll say it again. He who chases many rabbits catches none. So find the thing that you enjoy, you know, the passion, and you know, you'll get good at it. If you're not good, you'll get good. You know, it comes in repetition, you know, and you know, just ask yourself, like, what do I want to become? You know, and what actions do I need to do to make a difference in this world? You know, and that's the greater mission. Just this last weekend, you know, the rapper artist Kanye West, you know, I'm sure you guys seen all his stuff in the news in the past, you know, year or years, and all the crazy stuff that this guy's done. But just this last week, on random, he just went back to his roots and he did like a pop-up show, you know, and he sold out on the very first night. He sold out immediately. And the website that was selling his tickets, they saw that they had over 1 million hits on that website. So they told him, hey, if you decide you want to do another concert anytime, I guarantee it to sell out. So he's like, all right, we'll just do another one, part 2. So he went back to back on Thursday and Friday and sold out. Not only did he sell out, but he put it on YouTube for everybody to watch. And that got so many views and the playback. And I say this because the greater mission, right? He just went back to the simple things that he used to do and why people, you know, follow him and stuff like that. So sometimes, you know, you gotta, I say that because a big, you know, celebrity like that had to go back to, you know, so.
Exactly, yeah. And you know, really the societal impact, or you know, the greater impact is a part of the greater mission, right? Because you know, so often we make our own world about ourselves, right? But you know, whenever you really step back and you're like, how can I help others? That's whenever you start to truly feel fulfilled, because not only are you filling up your own cup, but you're filling up the cup of others with your own cup. And that's really what I've been trying to do, and what I've been really aspiring to do is really help others, you know. That's why we started this podcast, is because Henry and I, we have a lot of common interests, and the biggest one I would say is helping others, and not only that, but spreading, you know, in a term, the gospel, right? The gospel of goodness, of truth. And you know, that's why we made this podcast, because we want to spread not only a positive message, but a message that you can actually chew on and use. Because so often I feel like every time I listen to a podcast, maybe it's the podcast that I'm looking into, but I just feel like I don't really walk away from anything with it, or I don't walk away with anything really. I mean, it's pure entertainment. And so, you know, our bigger mission, or our bigger purpose of this is to help others. And so, you know, I kind of want to get into the last topic, which is, you know, the purpose protocol, if you want to call it that. But pretty much really test yourself, write down, you know, the top 10 things that you're passionate about, and really brainstorm ways to integrate those things into your business. Because again, let's say you have you know, you have 3 things that are creative, and maybe you have like 7 things that are more practical or whatever. Well, now you have a map, or you can really map out what it is that that you're passionate about and put it into your business.
Absolutely. Those are great points. Like Joe said, we did start this for that reason, and it's been good, and I want to shout out, our podcast because it's been 1 year. We've been consistent with it, and it didn't even feel like a year. You know what I mean? It's amazing, and just sticking with it, So that in itself is, like a testament and a confirmation, because we were both kind of like, well, we don't know, So whenever this finds you, you know what I mean? We hope that all the information that we're sharing helps you in some way, and taking these things we're sharing with you, because these are the things we're implementing in our life and seeing the results. So just the longevity of the 1 year for us, that in itself is already, a blessing. So, and, as Joe said, write it down, it's the gift inventory, right? Listing your personal strengths and reflecting on how they can be, specifically leveraged to serve your clients and your team better, and it's important, you know what I mean? It's important that when you're doing your passion or chasing after these things, that, it lines up with what you really believe, right? There's a few things that I've had to walk away from because it just doesn't line up with my beliefs, and a lot of people are like, man, you're walking away from good money. I'm like, yeah, but it doesn't line up with what I believe. It's not part of my journey, my compass, my purpose, So and then write down a purpose statement, right? So that's the ultimate compass, crafting a concise, inspiring declaration that, can perfectly encapsulate your gifts and your passions and your values. Very important. You know what I mean? There's a saying, stand for something or you'll fall for anything. So with that, guys, the overall thing that we're trying to just drive home here is to exercise and find your North Star, right? And that just comes from, instead of looking for external validation from everybody, start going inside and see, like, well, what makes me happy? What makes me want to do this? What would I do even if I didn't get paid for it? You know what I mean? And if I can do this all the time, then how can I monetize this? And there's so many people that are doing it, Go look at your passions and your desires and the things that you like, and just go do a little research on it. And if you don't know where to go check Etsy. That's probably the easiest place. Go check Reddit. That's another tool that'll help you, because you already know the skills, the gifts, and the abilities you have. You know what I mean? The problem that we're dealing with is, how do we monetize it so that I can do this all the time? And again, once you start doing it, we talked about the accidental niche, you'll kind of stumble into it, but it's not a stumble. It's just an awareness that you're coming into the realization, and it's by all the things that we said. So I said a lot. Let me go ahead and bring Joe back on and see if he has any final thoughts or any closing ideas before we end the podcast. Go ahead, bro.
Yeah, for sure. Pretty much, I just want to second everything that Henry just said, right? I mean, a lot of it is just find what you're passionate about, know what you're passionate about, and make your life around that. Because, again, if you're not doing that, it's very easy to get sucked into the uncertainty loop, or, just like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do today. I don't know, it's just a lot, right? And so if you build your life around your passions, your life will brighten up. But I want to give a shout out to our community. If you're an entrepreneur tired of doing everything alone, we have a community that combines practical self-growth tools as well as community support. Help you stay focused and follow through with whatever you're trying to do. So that's at backtobrilliance.com. If you scroll down to our community section, you'll be linked up with like-minded people like you.
Well said. All right, guys. Well, thanks for tuning in and listening to our podcast. We appreciate it very much. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment or review. It helps great people like you find our podcast. And with that, we're out. Until the next time, stay blessed.
Bye-bye.